Hi everyone, I'm Neha, Marketing and Communications Manager at Involve. I'm so excited to be speaking to Curtis Kesler today from Dow. Curtis is one of our 20 Enable Role Model List role models, and he's based in the US. Hi Curtis. So, in a nutshell, tell us about your career journey until this point.
Career journey until this point, I've been with Dow 22 years. And in that 22-year period of time, the first 5 of that were in customer service in our commercial organization. And the remaining 17 of that, so the most recent 17 years, have been in HR. And from a degree standpoint, I had a focus on HR. And in the HR world at Dow, I've spent time in compensation and development and operations and most often in the HR partner space. And along with that HR career, I've also been very engaged with our disability employee network, so our disability focused ERG, and I became involved with DEN, as we call it, in about 2007. And now I'm a global co-chair for Disability Employee Network internally.
Who's your role model and why?
I think about role models. I really don't have one specific person that I think of in terms of role model. And the reason why is, if I look at the people I interact with on a day-to-day basis, there are so many wonderful people that bring out the best in me and as well as in others. And so I kind of go through each day and I find a piece of brilliance in someone or something that I respect, something that I want to emulate, something that I really take to heart and think they're making this world a better place or they're making me a better place, and they become a role model. And it may be one interaction, it may be a long relationship such as a career mentor, family member, friend, but I find that there are so many role models each and every day, and each of us can be a role model. And it just takes a glimpse of something that we see, something we hear that makes us feel like we want to do more, do better. And so I don't really have an easy answer in terms of one person. There are so many. And I tend to look at qualities as in terms of, integrity, honesty, or someone doing something nice for a stranger. They become a role model in sorts. So perhaps an unusual answer, but it's how I face the day.
What's the biggest risk you've ever taken, and what's your greatest career achievement?
Biggest risk I've ever taken in my career was shortly after, so I'm going to go back into 2004. So June 22nd, 2004 is when I was diagnosed with MS, with multiple sclerosis. And I was having a lot of very visible challenges, I'll say, at that point in time. And the biggest risk was disclosing that I had MS to my leader. And it kind of was something that I had to do, or I felt very compelled to do. Being a person, I live my life with very calculated risks. And this is something I really didn't have in my control because I was having equilibrium issues and balance issues. And so when I walked down the hallway at work, I would really, to others, it may have looked like I was intoxicated walking down the hallway. And I thought, this is not good. I can't have people thinking this. So the biggest challenge I've faced so far was telling my MS story to others. And I found that once I did it once to my leader, it became so much easier. And that kind of leads into the biggest career achievement. I wouldn't say it's a role. I wouldn't say it's one thing that I've done, but how I've been able to influence others because I'm able to tell my story and do it in a comfortable way, in a way that's me. And so bringing my entire self to work every day and influencing others to do the same, that's probably my biggest career achievement and something that I want to leave as a legacy of driving and helping others to feel included and a part of things.
In a short sentence, what would you tell your 18-year-old self if they could see you now?
There's so many things I would tell my 18-year-old self. I think in a sentence, it's play to your strengths and give yourself some grace.
How has your personal journey shaped the way you navigate your career?
I think about my personal journey in the early days of being diagnosed with MS, because that was paramount. Obviously, it impacted everything in my world and my family and my career. And so if I think about my personal journey, that moment in time made me really focus on where can I find and maintain balance? How do I consistently and frequently reprioritize to make sure that I'm focusing on what's needed and what's most important today, but also so that I can achieve the end game in the future and achieve my goals. The personal journey, it's allowed me to prioritize and find my own motivators and my own demotivators, which has carried over into my career, because I found that in my personal motivators, if those exist in my jobs and whatever career opportunity it is, I'm going to be probably adding more value, driving a greater impact, and happier than if there are some of my personal demotivators. And so my personal journey it's one with my career, and it's a balance, and that balance comes with balancing family and friends and career aspirations. And that's meant in some ways in my career and navigating it that I've perhaps chosen not to pursue certain opportunities, perhaps opportunities which would lead to bigger and better things in terms of growth and trajectory in an organization. And sometimes I've chosen that I need to spend more time on the career versus on the personal side of things. But it all comes down to balance, and where is it best to spend my time and mainly my energy, because there's only so much of that in a day that I can really give out.
What's one myth or misconception surrounding disability that you want to see debunked?
One misconception I want to see debunked is the misconception that there are immediate limitations if someone has a disability, or the assumption that someone can't. Just because, and this may sound odd, but just because the packaging that their beautiful mind comes in looks different than the packaging that someone's used to, that there's an immediate limitation, and that there's this bias or stigma that may exist because of the packaging on someone's beautiful mind. I would love to see that debunked. And I think back over the COVID years, we're moving in a very positive direction for debunking that, because we're now having conversations globally as well as locally that we perhaps weren't comfortable having before, about challenges that people face, hardships, whether or not someone's okay, and the stigma conversations that we never wanted to have before. I think we're starting to have them, and more comfortably. So I think we're heading in a good direction, but those are the misconceptions I'd like to see just debunked, just changed.
How has connecting globally with people in other countries or regions influenced your thinking or approach?
Connecting globally has, one, it's raised my awareness that people are people all over the world. We're consistent in that we all have something going on that's bigger than we are. And connecting with others has influenced my thinking in a way that it challenged my own perceptions in many cases. It challenged my own boundaries that I perhaps have either set correctly or incorrectly on my own life or on others. But it's given me an awareness that there is a need for accessibility in the world that's consistent. And there's a need for an awareness for knowledge and understanding. And there's a need for, from, if I think about the approach side of things, there's a need to remove boundaries and barriers, drive the right level of accessibility so that people can bring their entire self to work without being bound or inhibited in any way, shape, or form, mentally or physically. But the approach that working globally has allowed me to take is that grassroots efforts are vital to any initiative in the disability space. When they're strategically aligned, they help really drive forward in a mission or a vision or a strategy. And so I think global thinking and global interaction has broadened my thinking tremendously. And it's given us a more sound approach on how do we tackle some of these issues so that we can bring out the best in people and they can thrive.
How do you think driving inclusion in the US differs from other parts of the world? Are there unique challenges or opportunities?
So in North America, when I think about others that I work with or focusing on inclusion, I don't see that the US has, or North America has, unique challenges or opportunities. I think each country, given country laws, those present unique challenges for any sort of centralization of policies and practices. But what I see is more commonality as opposed to, challenges, definite opportunities, and the opportunities that are pretty consistent, and that we need to continue to drive levels of awareness and understanding. We need to drive for accessible workplaces and accessible information, accessibility to coworkers and peers and support networks. And then, some of the challenges and opportunities that have come up. I'll say the challenge during the recent years with COVID of being isolated and therefore not being able to connect with people quite as much on inclusion-based initiatives, but also opportunities in that because of that isolation, now we're coming out of that isolation and we're having conversations we've never had before. We're challenging stigma that we didn't challenge before. And there's more comfort in that. And I've seen an increase in trust. And so I'd say if there's one challenge that will hopefully not always exist, but it definitely is there now, is how do we build trust in the right way to drive an inclusive culture, an inclusive, I'm going to say, work environment, but also just life in general, of how do we build trust with each other so that we can be ourselves and talk about some of the things we need to talk about and tackle the challenges we need to tackle.
What are two pieces of key practical advice that you would give business leaders and allies to drive disability inclusion in business?
The first two pieces of advice that come to my mind are focus on your people and build a culture of trust, first and foremost. Without trust in an organization and trust with your people, you're not going to get the business results you want, and you're not going to have the cultural impact you want. And the number two piece of advice I would say is enable your people, because you hopefully built this culture of trust, enable your people to bring their entire self to work without barriers so that you can unleash the brilliance and they can unleash the brilliance in their mind, because that's why we hired them, because of their brilliant mind and the problems they can solve. And we want them to unleash that brilliance without fear, without any concern. So without any static or noise or mental barriers. And so those are the two pieces of advice I would offer. Focus on your people, build trust, and allow them to do the wonderful thing that we hired them to do.
Thanks for sharing your journey and your insights with us, Curtis.